In 2017, Paula Williams was struggling. Her kids were having a tough time in school, so when she saw any of the other moms, she would run and hide, feeling as though she was a bad mother. Williams decided she was done running from her shame and decided to share her shame to anybody who asked. She realized that the more she shared her shame, the less shameful she felt, and decided she wanted to give other people the chance to do the same. So she took an old phone booth, painted it, and put a recording device in an old-style phone. Thus, the Shame Booth was born. Its mission? To heal the world of shame. The Shame Booth has traveled all over the country. This includes places like California, Tennessee, and even British Columbia. And as the project grew in its significance, they added a shame hotline where people could call in and share their shame from the comfort of their own home. So to fully understand how the Shame Booth affects how we deal with shame, we must ask the question: how does the Shame Booth help individuals overcome that which they view as shameful? In order to answer this question, we will look at the chapter, Why, How Often, and to Whom Women Disclose, and what factors influence whether disclosure is healing, found in the 2012 book, Talking About Sexual Assault, Society's Response to Survivors, by Sarah E. Ullman. Dr. Ullman's research is ideal for analysis because it explores the most positive experiences survivors of sexual assault have when sharing their trauma. So today, we will first take a look at Dr. Ullman's research, then apply it to Paula Williams' Shame Booth, before finally looking at some implications. Dr. Ullman's book and research emerged with grants from the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism, the National Institute of Mental Health, and support from the University of Illinois at Chicago. Ullman's work assesses the effectiveness of disclosure through environmental factors. Those factors are who initiates the disclosure, the level of detail in the disclosure, and the social reactions to the disclosure. First, who initiates the disclosure? Through a series of interviews, Ullman found that more than 1/3 of disclosures of sexual assault are not initiated by the survivors. However, when survivors actively sought help from others, their experiences were overwhelmingly more positive. Additionally, when survivors seek help from informal sources, they are more likely to have a positive experience than with a formal source. Second, the level of detail in the disclosure. Ullman found that the more detailed the disclosure, the better it affects the person disclosing. This relates to the level of cognitive processing that occurs. The more detailed the disclosure, the more cognitive processing, the better that person can work through the trauma related to that event. Finally, the social reactions to the disclosure. For Ullman, this is the most important aspect of disclosure. Talking alone or talking to a supportive group of people after being exposed to a stressful stimulus reduced those negative feelings. However, negative reactions reinforce silence. This, in turn, reduces the chance of disclosure in the future. So now that we've taken a look at Dr. Ullman's work, let's apply it to Paula Williams' Shame Booth. First, who initiates the disclosure? The Shame Booth creates an open space where anybody can walk into their physical traveling booth or call into their shame hotline and initiate their own disclosure. The Shame Booth is meant to be a personal experience. This is made clear on their website, last accessed October 7th, 2021, stating that when you walk in and close the doors behind you, you are surrounded by a beautiful light blue color. And suddenly it's just you and the phone, a lifeline to yourself. Because the Shame Booth allows people to be in control of their situations, it fulfills our first step in a positive disclosure. Second, the level of detail in the disclosure. The most important aspect of the Shame Booth is anonymity and how it leads to a more detailed and therefore healing disclosure. In one Shame Booth recording titled, "I Hold It to My Body," a woman describes how she was sexually abused. She describes that she is going to use this opportunity to be accepting of herself, followed with, "If I don't do it now, when will I do it?" The Shame Booth allowed this woman to speak about something she had never talked about before, leading to a more detailed and healing disclosure, thus fulfilling our second step in a positive disclosure. Finally, the social reactions to the disclosure. The whole idea of the shame booth is that it is good to express the things that make you feel shame. The crew of the shame booth is described as having a very welcoming demeanor. To quote their previously cited website, surrounding the booth are the shame dames, with their big smiles, their hats and t-shirts, and a welcoming nature, inviting you to walk in, sit down, close the door, pick up the phone, and speak your shame. Because of the overwhelmingly positive reactions and environment to the disclosure, it fulfills our final step in a positive disclosure. So now that we've taken a look at Ullman's model and applied it to Paula Williams' shame booth, we can now return to our research question. How does the shame booth help individuals overcome that which they view as shameful? Through a combination of anonymity and positive disclosure, the shame booth creates an open space where people can express the things they fear society will deem as shameful. Knowing this, let's look at some implications. Implications can be found on the personal, social, and economic level. So first, let's look at how it increases the number of disclosures on a personal level. Through the application of Ullman's model, we know that the shame booth meets the requirement of a positive disclosure. So the shame booth should be seen as a blueprint for anonymous social disclosure. As noted by Melissa C. Brown in her 2019 article with Stanford's Institute of Gender Research, disclosure can prove incredibly empowering on an individual level. During the Me Too movement, survivors were coming forward in waves to bring their abuser out into the light. And as this movement evolved, there became the development of whisper networks, or places where people can share their Me Too stories in specific unofficial reporting channels. And, as stated in Brown's article, there is a great hunger for this kind of ability to share people's experiences without fear of retribution. Now, let's look at how it turns our negative coping mechanisms into positive ones accepted on a more social level. According to the organization Choosing Therapy, on November 12, 2020, unresolved shame can lead to self-destructive behaviors, such as drug and alcohol abuse, self-sabotaging in opportunities and relationships, isolating, and so much more. But the shame booth challenges this idea. By taking active steps to change the social narrative surrounding shame, we can break these patterns and help people overcome the things they fear society will deem shameful, turning negative coping mechanisms into positive ones. Finally, on the economic level, the success in Williams' work in reframing shame demonstrates the continued need for understanding regarding the weaponization of shame. We know that the shame booth appeals to self-hate. We know that companies appeal to self-hatred to gain more consumers. The International Journal of Management Reviews, last updated in July of 2021, talks about these avenues for marketing by appealing to financial guilt, health guilt, moral guilt, and social responsibility guilt. Through the success of the shame booth, we can break these patterns and create a healthier society. So today, we looked at Paula Williams' shame booth. In order to understand how the shame booth affects how we deal with shame, we first looked at Dr. Ullman's model of positive disclosure. Then, we applied it to Paula Williams' shame booth before finally looking at some implications. So maybe one day we can achieve Paula Williams' dream and rid the world of shame.